All right, everyone, I guess we can get started. Um, my name is Kevin Gunn. I am coordinator of digital scholarship at the Catholic University of America Libraries. My colleague Charles Gallagher was supposed to co-teach with me today, but unfortunately had a prior commitment, so I'll be flying solo. Today's workshop will be recorded, and the recording and slides will be made available to you at a later date. Today, I would like to provide you with an overview of best practices, tips, and general good advice for working on a digital scholarship project. So let's see. And I'd like to give these best practices, tips, and good advice before you decide on whether to work on a project. So it may be possible that an hour from now you may be dissuaded from any idea that you have, but maybe that's a good idea, or maybe it requires further thought on your part. But I consider that a win all the way around. So if you have any questions, feel free to unmute as I go through the workshop, or you can put the questions in the chat, whatever works for you. All right, so let's get started. So, yes, I am a librarian, coordinator of digital scholarship. I've been working in this area since 2009, 2010, around there. This is based on workshops based on my education, my endeavors, and my experiences working with students and faculty at CUA. So about 10 years ago, I did a course called Project Development. It was a week-long full day course on project development. It was sponsored by the Humanities Intensive Learning and Teaching at University of Maryland, College Park, and it was taught by doctors Jennifer Giuliano and Simon Appleford, who had a lot of experience working with digital humanities projects. So I found this institute quite useful, and I use a lot of their sources and information in the presentation today. Second, I also created and taught a library science course here at Catholic University. It was in the Department of Library and Information Science, and I did it for about 4 or 5 years, 2015 to 2019. The course was a special topic course, and it was quite successful and was eventually adopted into the curriculum. Then last, my experiences with students and faculty at CUA over the last gee whiz, 15 plus years. I've done everything from a weekend workshop on thesauri construction for an NEH Digital Humanities grant, to doing an oral history project of a Christian community just outside of Detroit, where we did field research. We did oral interviews with the members of that community. So I'll tell you this, you learn a lot as you go along, and which has a lot of advantages, but it can also have disadvantages, as we will see later. So today I'm going to be talking about the good, bad, and ugly. So the first question you have to ask yourself is, should I embark on this project? It is very important. It's been my experience that people will begin a project because it's a neat idea. They select a cool digital technology and they begin working on the project until they run into problems. And then they call me. For example, I had a student in biblical studies who had been inputting data and text into an Excel spreadsheet. And about 2,000 rows in, she's, no, this isn't a really good idea. So we had a conversation, and honestly, I could not really help her at that point. She recognized she was about halfway through, so she ended up slogging through it. But it would have been much better if she knew where to go to find relevant the tools that would help her. And I'll show you a good place later in the workshop. I also had a faculty member who created a project on WordPress, and she was like 9/10 done. She had brought in other people to work on it. It was great. She came to me and she asked, given that it's WordPress, I have a plugin that I want to put in there, but I don't know how to do it type thing. And I was not familiar with WordPress at the time. I had to reach out to a librarian colleague, one of our IT folks, and he was able to talk with her and see what she wanted. And he ended up doing it in a couple of hours. So it was very straightforward in that. So there's stuff I can work on directly. There's stuff that I need to reach out and all that. And you'll see as we go through today, working with other people is very much a big part of working on a digital scholarship project. All right, so I want to give you an overview of the process, the big picture as it is. So we're going to go through all these particular points here. Um, this is very much an overview. So a lot of this will can apply to the solo researcher who is working on a small project, as well as a principal investigator who has a major, $100,000 grant, for example, who will need to bring in experts in their field to help with the principal investigator. So a lot of it will be relevant. Some of it won't, depending on what your needs are, but it gives you a very good broad picture. All right. Let's see. So before we get going, just some very quick key concepts to talk about. Specifically digital scholarship. It's been around for a few years now. People have been talking around 20 years, I guess. It's only been the last 10 years or so that people have started really, or a little over 10 years, that people have started really thinking about it and that. So if you think about digital scholarship, it's the use of digital evidence and method, digital authoring, digital publishing, digital curation and preservation, and digital use and reuse of scholarship. But if you take out the digital, it's basically just talking about scholarship. So when you look at that, uh, uh, you can look at this slide without using the word digital. So, to quote Clifford Lynch from CNI, that's a Coalition of Network Information. He said that, digital scholarship is essentially scholarship. And I say this because we still have scholars and faculty out there who think that it's not good enough as quote unquote real scholarship. And I really want to disavow that opinion. All right, so what is a project? Well, it is a sequence of events. Projects are wonderful things. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end of related activities that are managed in a workflow. So you have an original question, issue, or problem that you want to work on. Same with, scholarship. You will develop your resources for a specific audience, and you're writing for someone, but who is that going to be? What comes out of it, out of your project? Is it a research article? Is it a website, symposium, or some other end products? You always want to have something that comes out of it. And of course, you need to be a project manager. If you're doing a solo research project, you are the project manager. So you have to have some basic knowledge and skills of project management. Good place to go is the Project Management Institute. They have tons of great information there. If you are a principal investigator working with a large group of people, you're definitely going to need a project manager who's separate from you. And I'll get to that in a moment. So examples of projects, anything and everything about out there, events, meetings, workshops, and conferences, symposiums, research, analysis, investigation, experiment, development. I think I've done most of these in some way, shape, or form. So you want to think of what it is that you're going to be working on. As I said, projects have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So you want to have something that where you're telling a story, you're writing an argument, you're answering a question, you're developing a theory. So what are the best sources? What are the sources that are available to you? So for example, a text analysis project, um, do you have access to scanners? Are they OCR capable? How about the text? You have the actual text. How many texts? For example, I had one student who wanted to scan 100 books for a project for a semester. It's not feasible. Questions I'll ask for that is who's doing the scanning? What about the copyright issues involved? Where's the final scanned data set? Where's that going to be? Where's it going to be permanently held? Do you understand that you cannot give it out to everyone, that sort of thing? So if he expected library staff to do it, no, we have limited resources and we're not able to do that. If his project was much smaller, let's say 5 books or something, then we could do a lot more. So we could possibly work on that. So you have to look at that. You have to look, the primary and secondary sources, are they available? Is it feasible? Do you have access to technology in that? And then, of course, there's the quality and complexity of what it is that you're working on. All right, so good ideas for a project. So how do you know it's a good idea? I know the standards of good scholarship still apply. So it has an audience of more than you. It challenges disciplinary assumptions in your fields. Does it innovate a new method or approach to solving a particular problem? Is it clearly elucidates its own value? Can people see the value of it just by reading your paper, for example, or looking at your website? Does it improve on previous efforts that have been done before? So these are sorts of good ideas that can get you started. So what is a bad idea? So things to consider, thinking that only your opinion or work on the project matters, right? If it's only for one person, that audience is you, then maybe something to rethink about how much money, time, and effort you're going to be putting into it. Starting a project without considering your commitment to it. Oh boy, that's a big one. We constantly underestimate the amount of time needed for any given task. We're human beings after all. So you always want to, start considering how much time you want to devote to this thing. You're looking at someone else's project and attempting to duplicate it wholesale. So there's a famous website out there, Letters from the Dispatch. So it talked about letters from Civil War folks in Richmond, and it was a great website to look at and all that. But you wouldn't want to duplicate that for, let's say, Philadelphia. What would be the point? You probably could do that, but again, what is it that you're trying to solve, or what problem you're trying to solve, or whatever issue you want to elucidate? I mean, you can't really just cut and paste, so to speak. And last, you need to have sort of a clear measure of what is considered project success. So if you don't have that, how do you define success and completeness? How do you know that you've won the day and that you can walk away from this project? So if you're not clear on that, if it's open-ended, that's not a project. A project has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So you have to decide what would count for success for you. All right. Another way you can look at is statements of significance and innovation. So you want to explain in terms comprehensible to a general audience the significance of your proposed project. So if it's very esoteric, people are not going to really care. If it's something that has general audience appeal, then that is something that will be worth doing. So if you look at the significance of it, how does your project contribute to a particular discipline or field? Does it contribute to the humanities or sciences more generally? What is the impact of your research? In short, what are you going to change to impact? What needs changing out there? So that's the significance. Now, the innovation part is that you can create something new, and you're able to prove it, by the way. If you can offer an interesting approach to tackling a problem, that is always useful. Is there a technical innovation that you're exploring? You can make use of an existing technology, but in a new way. It is the project collaboration itself that is innovative. So you can have two different groups working on something, say a public library and a research institution library, that are working on something that helps the general public. And last, you can address a longstanding humanities or sciences issue in a new way. So there's a lot of different ways that one can go. So many different ways that one can contribute to the scholarship. And you should be exploring those. All right, so next step is building your team. So once you have determined that you have a good idea, it passes mustard, you've talked with friends and that, and it is feasible to implement, you think, yes, I can actually see doing it, then you need to build your team. How do you do that? Right? So how do you know that you're actually ready for a team? So as an individual, your own limits have been reached. So intellectually, so that you have an intellectual limitation whereby you will need to bring in collaborators who have different perspectives. You may be limited technically and require a person or persons with a particular set of skills. Last, you may not have the infrastructure, say the money, the institution, management, preservation platform, all that sort of stuff. That you feel, oh gee, at this point, I'm going to need a team. So staffing your project can get quite complicated. So if you're working on a solo project, your use of these folks' services will be quite limited. However, for larger projects, you're going to need folks in these different areas. So the administration, you're going to need the project director or PI, principal investigator, and an assistant director to go along with that. Usually, if you're the principal investigator, you're going to be the principal investigator. You're the senior administrator of this. So you're the one who's going to be providing the intellectual and strategic leadership, while the associate or assistant director works on development and outreach. The next person you're going to need is a project manager, the details person, the person who handles all the logistics, the meetings, all that stuff. They focus on planning and tracking of deliverables and the day-to-day activity. And Jennifer and Simon had very highly recommended that the project manager and the principal investigator be two different people. The principal investigator deals with the vision. The project manager deals with the day-to-day stuff. As well, you're going to have all the technical staff, the lead programmer who does the technical vision and day-to-day supervision of the programmers, the hackers, the coders, the builders. You're going to need a systems administrator, usually someone who knows experience with hardware and software and system configuration and security and access, always important. You have visual outreach. You probably need someone with some experience as a graphic designer, working on logos, brochures, mailings, websites, and that sort of thing. And also someone who works with the web design as well. So, content management, installs, that sort of thing, system installs, custom sites, a center site where it's all going to be located. If you're doing grants and funding of various natures, you're going to need financial or business staff. So business manager who has the financial nuts and bolts, handles the personnel, the grants administration, all that sort of stuff. And then last, hopefully you want to get your project, once it's completed, you want to get it out there and let people see it and know it. So education and outreach is quite good. So you need someone who can do curriculum designs, and trainers will help with your site as necessary. So project team principles. So the type of staffing you choose will affect your project's capacity and its obligations. So you can have a good idea, but is your website designer still learning web design? That could be a problem. That will impact your workflow, to be sure. The more part-time staff on your project, the more coordination is required by the project manager. And that involves more stress all around of seeing it up close and personal, let me tell you. The split attention problem, do you have are you having too many things on your plate as you're moving forward? Because then you can lose focus on what your goals are. So where do you find your team members? You can find them anywhere. They could be in your department, your colleagues, the IT staff, administration, your college, the IT staff, contracts, grants office, for example. You have campus IT, the systems administrators, programmers, data stores. It's worth having conversations with a lot of people around your campus. Library, subject specialists, librarians. Hey, how you doing? Programmers. We have lots of people that could possibly help who have specialized knowledge and a background. So you really want to be imaginative and seeing who you can reach out to. And I should point out, they don't have to come from your campus. They don't have to be academics. And they certainly don't have to be in your particular field or discipline. In short, you're looking for qualified people regardless of where they are located. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, you've identified someone. How do you get them to say yes? Well, do they already provide this service or work, paid or unpaid? My buddy, the librarian who solved the um, WordPress problem, it only took him a couple hours. He already knew all that stuff and he's getting paid to help faculty anyway. So why not? If this was a major project where he would have spent like a humongous amount of time, then that would have been a different conversation. But he said, yeah, I can do a WordPress plug-in, no problem. So there's always that balancing act, you know, in looking for people, have they said they want to do this type of thing? So if they have a strategic plan in mind, you know, then they're motivated to do it. They're enthusiastic people are the best. So if you can get someone like that, where their interests and your interests intertwine, then that's really great. You also have people who may are looking for a promotion. So what does their boss care about? So there's always this self-interest principle. So if a faculty member is looking to get tenure, is this something that would be your project, be something that they would be willing to work on type thing? And of course, the last one is, the friendship discount. Do you know them already? Do you have a buddy who will just say, yeah, sure, I'll help you out? So the different ways you can get people to say yes. So when you do line up your members, you should identify what they will contribute, have a clear statement of the value of the project to the partner, and you should determine their pattern of engagement. So each member should be clear on what it is that they will contribute, have a clear written statement of the value of the project to the partner and determine how and when the member will engage the project, okay? These tasks will be managed by the project manager who will hold meetings, delineate the tasks, keep everyone on board, so to speak. So the next step is, what concrete products do you want to come out of your major project? So each project transforms the questions and opens up new sources. So if your research wouldn't change anything, why are you doing it? Your idea for research might be the product of an earlier project, building from that. And never forget that working in these areas, failure is a product. There's nothing wrong with it. You try something and it did not work, so your hypothesis, was negative. It showed there's no correlation to what you're looking at. So if you try different things, at the end of the day, you can write a research paper, outlining the process and failed aspects of the project. And that still becomes a learning tool. I'm a former editor-in-chief for a library science journal, and I've had, published articles that deal with lessons learned. so that other librarians down the road may learn to avoid these similar pitfalls. So that's educational as well. So what's the type of products that you can um, put out? So you have everything from blog posts to press releases, code, original code, websites, tweets, social media, all these sorts of stuff. Apps, books, articles, and presentations. Um, that could all be something to create. So tracking your products, you want to look at your frequency. So if you're doing tweeting or reposting on social media, keep track of that stuff. Who's looking at this stuff? Where are they? The geographical distribution network is quite useful. What are the number of citations that is being where your project is being cited? Online engagements of various things, comments and visits on websites, for example, that could be something as well. There's always Google Analytics and Google Scholar. So if you're the primary author of something, you can look at Google Scholar and see how often with bibliometrics and that, you can look at who's citing, how often you've been cited, that sort of thing. So there's different ways that you can track your products. So quick tips. Yeah, keep a running Excel document if you want. You can contribute quarterly, if not monthly, to it. So you're keeping track of what you want to um, um, of what you're doing in that. You want to provide a copy of the reports to stakeholders, whether it's an annual meeting or if it's the last meeting. You want to show the document how you've worked on your project over that time. And in such a situation, you want to give it to one of your team members and make that it's that person's job to track the products. Um, so So who are you going to report your products to? Well, you can do the team members, obviously. Hey guys, here's what we're working on, what we've accomplished so far. That gives them a sense of accomplishment and a sense of pride in what they're working on. You want to look at your stakeholders, that's basically your audience, and let them tweet out that this is what progress you're making on your project. You have your administrators who are supporting you in various ways. You have your funders as well. You want to keep your funders in the loop, let me tell you. And you also have your boss, your chair, your dean, whoever is monitoring your work to keep them in the loop. Okay, so next one is the technologies to work and manage your project. So a very good place to get started is this website called Tapor3. And this has research tools for studying text, for example, if that is your angle. And this is a great example because it has, close to 1,700 different software packages. And you'll notice on the right-hand side here, it says the categories. So if you're doing a lot of work or some work on your project that involves some of these tasks, then it can help you restrict what you're doing. It can narrow down to the most promising software packages that you could possibly use. So this website has a lot of freebies, has freemiums, and there's stuff, and there's of course there's subscriptions to these. So it's definitely worth a look if you're, for example, studying text. There are other websites out there where you can check different things out in that. But this is one good place where you could get started. So for my a biblical studies student, this would have been a really good place for her to begin to check out, see if what tools that she could use. So unfortunately, she wasn't aware of it. And like I said, by the time she came to me, she was halfway down the project, and by that point, it's like, a little too late. All right, so you want to evaluate your needs. What do you want to do? How much time do you want to spend doing it? What is my budget? Is it open source or is it commercial, these software packages? Who will be the primary user? It may not be you, may not be your project manager, maybe one of your other colleagues working on this. So has someone else done this before? So you can reach out to them and say, hey, what software did you use? Oh, you did use that? Okay, I'm going to go with that. So there's different ways, you can evaluate your needs. Does your campus have an existing solution or resource? So that's always a good question to ask. Every institution is different, so it's worth making a few phone calls and seeing what's available. And you always have to ask that question, do I have to build from scratch? Because if you have to, then it's going to take, it's going to impact your whole workflow. So something to consider. Next, students, project development with students. Majority of projects that I've worked on over the years have involved students in some way, shape, or form. So it's important to talk about students and what they can contribute to your project and why, and what their limitations can be, and what you need to be aware of. So first of all, students are not free labor. Students should be doing meaningful work. They should be building their CVs, to put it bluntly. So that's important to consider. They're not there to do scut work that others don't want to do, okay? Doing corrections of a website or that, yeah, it needs to be done, but that's not the totality of what they should be doing. So they should have clearly defined roles and assignments so there's no confusion. The tasks in these roles will be new, and there's always a learning curve for students when they're looking at it. Last, your students are your collaborators on the project and should be treated as such. Okay. So on this project, you're all colleagues. Now, practical considerations. Questions you need to ask. Is it going to take longer to teach the students than it would be either if you just did it yourself or if you hired a professional? So you have to balance that one way or the other. Is the quality of work you need going to be met by the students? So if you have someone who's a web designer, he's 20 years old, he's been doing web design for 10 years, he's probably got a very good idea of what he's doing. That would be very different from a student who's just started a couple months ago learning that. So you have to know what sort of quality work that they will be able to produce. Are you willing or able to manage student issues? So what are the most common issues with students, right? Non-standard work hours, limited notice for vacation, exams, and personal matters. I mean, that's just life. So those are the things you have to consider. And then also pay rates and salaries. Undergrads, was it 15 bucks an hour or something? Maybe it's more, I'm not too sure. Are you going to be hiring instead someone who's an advanced professional, in which case you can get kind of pricey very quick. And it's always good if you can swing it, is to have for coding projects, for example, it's always best to get someone outside the project to periodically look and review the coding for quality control. So quality control is always good when you're creating new material. All right. Intellectual property. Oh, you never thought of that. Any work completed in the classroom is the student's intellectual property. You need students' permission to distribute their work beyond the classroom. And FERPA states that identifiable information about a student cannot be released to any third party without their consent. So, how do you get their consent? So here's a typical waiver. Students able to sign to work on the project, as long as not they're giving away a new research idea, then it's pretty straightforward. And that if you have something more complicated, so a typical waiver may include these elements, how the work will be used, the type of format, the revisions and updates as necessary, the dissemination, and where it's going to be archived. So there's a lot of these different points to consider. So Creative Commons or other licensing rules, example, must the student work always include student citation ad infinitum? You can have a web page. One way around that is you can have a web page that cites the contributions of present and former workers on the project. So you can look at it and see someone's listed name there. Oh yeah, they worked on that from 2016 to 2020 type thing. So they still get credit for it. It just didn't disappear off the web. So what happens if a project disbands or dies? Well, do you destroy student work after the project ends? Hopefully not. If you have considered digital preservation issues at the beginning of your project planning, you won't need to deal with this. You'll be able to have it archived somewhere. So things that you may need to consider. So importantly, this does not pertain to students who work for hire. If they work for hire on your project, they're getting paid, then that's it. Their work belongs to you, belongs to the project. And they will be governed by your institution's intellectual property rules. So that's something to consider. So most institutions enforce ownership of all copyright and licensing for student employees and staff. Thus, before you even start your project, you need to consult with your university legal office, and possibly get an intellectual property waiver. Now, what happens if you change institutions? Never thought of that, did you? Well, can you take your project with you? Well, sometimes yes, sometimes no. You should keep a copy of an intellectual property waiver, as well as a copy of the university policy and the results of any conversations with the legal office. If you move institutions, you should file these with your new institution so that there's a dialogue between institutions in order to remove any confusion. All right. Next, building your work plan. Let's see how we do with time. All right. So you need a work plan. It's going to consist of a list of itemized tasks, individual responsibilities that go with those tasks. There's going to be a time element involved, and you're going to need to include a list of deliverables or outcome element as well. So project management software, such as Basecamp, Productive, Asana, that sort of thing. There's literally hundreds out there, would be very useful. And there's generally a four-step process in this. So step one, you want to list every major objective, then add the individual steps that must be completed. For every task, you need to list who's responsible, list by their team, list by the person. So there's, again, no confusion. Step three, for every task, list the deliverable. How do you know a task is completed? Where does completed work go? And step four, for every task, list the amount of time required from start to finish. It's important to be mindful of time constraints and how long it will take to complete each task. Sometimes you just don't know. So budgeting your time. So a short-term project, you can break it down into a 40-hour work week, 5%, 10%, 20%, it could be 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, something that you'll have to keep in mind. So if it's a year-long project, 40 hours per week times 50 weeks, you want to take a couple weeks off. That's 2,000 hours. So 5%, 10%, 20%, all of a sudden that's 100 hours, 200, 800 hours. And that can build very quickly. So how long does it take? So check with experts who may have experience working on the project, so co-workers, hey, your librarians, faculty. For scanning 100 books, for example, I know that would take quite a bit of time. For example, are there others who have completed similar tasks, which may be a good guide? How many dependents does this particular task have? How many do I need to get to do things? How many things do I need to do first before I can get to the next task or objective is undertaken? So what comes prior to the task that you're looking at? So all these have to factor in time. All right, so ways to build a work plan. Well, you can do a simple Word document. You can do an Excel spreadsheet, a tree chart, Gantt project. So I mentioned project management software, Basecamp, Productive, Trello, Asana. These are things that you consider. Find something that works for you that, spend some time looking at that software, see if it meets your particular needs. Do you work well with it? So work plan changes, things happen which can affect the time frame. So how will you and your partners adapt? So you can't control everything, you can't control external factors, and you can't control personalities. So know this going in. There's always going to be some changes moving on ahead, and you're going to have to adapt. So scope change. So does a project change mean bringing in new people? Does the design development need to change? Or is there new technologies that have come forth? Does it change in the mission of what you're doing? Change in skills. For example, a student could cycle off a project. Okay, who replaces her? If that's your veteran web designer, then you're going to have to be looking for someone who has a lot of skill in that regard. Another thing to keep in mind is mission creep, and this is so common. You might feel pressure to expand the project based on new opportunities and partners. And it's insidious, but it's not evil. Let me put you that way. So, one of the projects I worked on was to do video interviews of the Christian community I mentioned earlier. So we went out and we met with people, we interviewed them in their homes and that. But what we discovered is that there were these very interesting dolls that had been created that the women had made and they displayed in their houses, and they were quite beautiful. And we decided to take photographs at that point because we didn't know if we were coming back or not. But that brings in the whole idea, lots of follow-up questions like, do you have the photographic standards? Who has this knowledge? So you can see that you can quickly get overwhelmed by too many of these tasks, even though the original concept of, yes, we should you know photograph and tag these dolls is a good idea. But if you're determining that in the field, well, that's going to have complications. So the baseline change, what happens? Looking at the entire project, what do you have now, which you didn't have at the beginning? Many costs are greater than expected or have risen since the project started. Maybe the institution you're working with made a resource that resource that you were anticipating is no longer available. Changes in the discipline mean that the project that you're working on may no longer be needed. So you can always have these various baseline changes that can affect your project. So when is change needed? When you aren't meeting deliverables, when your team isn't working well together, it happens. When you have new or a change in partners, when resources disappear, when funders or stakeholders request a change, and when your principal investigator isn't doing her job. So I've talked with people on projects and you would not believe, like you would think a principal investigator would be totally into the project, right? Because they're running the show. But um, I've had people tell me that, they'd send material to a particular principal investigator and they wouldn't hear back from him for 3 or 4 months. So that's not going to work for a project supposed to be moving forward. So basically, the project manager has to lay down law and say, if we don't hear from you by a particular date, then we will be stopping work on the project. So these are the things where it can get possibly quite personal. So when does a project become painful? You want to identify the quickest route to completion. You want to remove all extraneous meetings and work. And then you want to be upfront about what isn't working in the work plan, and go from there. So principles of budget design. We need the money. All right, so you want to getting started, you want to get plan ahead. You always want to refer back to your work plan. You want to determine the maximum available dollars. You always want to double check solicitations for specific requirements and limitations. Use a template if possible. You don't want to forget about indirect costs. And, don't be afraid to ask for help. So creating a track record of success to show your deans and administrators is a very good idea. You can always barter with other staff for services. You can always do that below the administrative level, I recommend. You can reach out to libraries for digital humanities projects, for example, and partner with them. You can apply the pressure method, get a posse of people together and get a meeting with the dean and then go from there. So salaries, you want to talk about the base calculations on actual salaries. You can't give yourself a pay raise, sorry. You want to include a 3%? If it's a multi-year project, do you include an annual 3% cost of living increase? Do you make it sure your people put in the correct categories? Don't forget to include benefits. And then, understand that students, staff, and faculty have different salary needs. So for example, faculty with a 9-month appointment are different than faculty with 12-month appointments. So you cannot increase a 12-month appointment over the 12-month salary. So little things like that. All right, so other direct costs, travel, materials and supplies, miscellaneous expenses, printing agendas, name tags, publication costs, publishing fees for project related articles. All this stuff adds up, so you need to plan ahead on that. So the State Department does have a meals and travel guide, and they'll list rates that you can use on your budget if you're doing international travel, for example. Other direct costs that you don't think about, but how about server hosting fees, inflation, and where will that money come from 3 years down the road, and how is it all going to be preserved for future researchers and that, you know, you have equipment purchases. For example, on our project, we used a 2 terabyte hard drive to record the stuff and transport it easily around. But, if it gets lost, that's a problem. Who keeps it moving forward? You know, you have catering or room rentals if participant support categories not allowed. You have consultant fees or honoraria. If you want to bring someone in to talk about your project, they may need an honoraria. So where's that money going to come from? All right, charters, agreements, and handshakes, all different. So you got to put it in writing. The more partners in the project, the more you need to memorialize any agreements. It's just not that people are mean or malicious, it's that we're all busy and we often forget. So we forget our agreements and thus we end up not delivering on them. But if you write them down, there's more chance of success. So to put it another way, if it's in writing, you can't ignore it. If it's in writing, others can't avoid it. And if it's writing, there's hypothetically an even playing field for everyone. All right, charters. So what are charters? Charters in project management lay out the shared values of the participants, the goals and needs of the project. So, and the type of products and technology which will be used. Now, the rules that cover this can be quite specific. So you have everything from documentation, where will the documentation be kept so that everyone can consult it, Then you have citations and attributions as well as publishing and credit. So is it just certain selected, tenured faculty, for example, who get to be the authors of publishing of a journal article, or is it everyone or whoever else? Maybe it's some of your students as well. These are questions that you need to ask going in. So who speaks for the project if you have more than one principal investigator? as often can be an issue. Roles and responsibilities, laid out clearly for everyone, students and faculty, other workers and that. And then define what sort of appropriate behaviors that you're going to be working on, try to alleviate that stress moving forward. And I notice we have a question in the chat. Oh, okay. Thank you. Have a good one. Bye-bye. All right. So you have all these sorts of questions you have to ask. Now, agreements, what sort of access to resources are you going to have, access to staff, and then what is the duration of that said access? So while agreements can contain the same information as a charter, an agreement does not necessarily have to be signed by all parties within a project. So do you want to work with a charter, is very much more formal, or do you want to have an agreement which is a little loosey-goosey, but is still, you have commitments that have to be made? And then the most weakest, if you will, relationship that you can have are handshake agreements. And they're quick and informal agreements between multiple parties. However, be wary. In short, having a basic understanding of human nature will serve you well. So be wary of untested partners who aren't amenable to formal agreements, even if only in email. Why is there that lack of perfunctory commitment to that? Be sure when the project relies on a handshake that if the handshake deal fails, the project can recover. Then last, know when to use a handshake to avoid bureaucracy. I think that's the greatest advantage of the handshake. If you have to go through multiple people and wait multiple months for something that can be done in a month, the whole part of the project be done in the month, then it's worthwhile just to avoid the bureaucracy. All right, branding and marketing your project. So project names, they should be easily distinguishable. They can be abbreviated or have an acronym. You should be identifiable to your audience. And you can always check, do a Google search to see if anyone's has a name, a business name or whatever under that particular name that you've come up with. So it's always a good idea to check. Project website. So you want to commit to a URL domain. While the URL for project may be unique, think carefully about how many sites you are prepared to manage. So if you just have one website, okay, that's fine. Who is going to maintain the project? Will you always have time, money, or support to update it? These domain names and websites, they have annual fees. So how are you going to maintain that going forward? So example, WordPress multi-site has a maintenance option that you can explore. Other factors to consider is that evaluating your team, delays in resources, and project documentation, storing your files, the white paper, dissemination of results, that sort of thing. You're going to have to consider those factors. Next one is all about the problems. So let me list to you some common problems that you'll have. So I call this when projects attack. Delays are avoidable. Avoidable or otherwise, they still slow you down. You can set hard deadlines. You can decide what you have to move forward. So you're halfway through a project, you don't know if you're going to have enough money or people or whatever, and you've got to wrap it up soon. You have to reassess your priorities, and then use your powers of persuasion and getting people on board and working towards that final end. So if you don't have enough money, you have to be upfront with everyone about what you can do. Which deliverables will have the most impact. Those are going to be your primary goals. So you definitely want to get something out of it. An end product, a paper, a website, whatever. Don't delay in identifying how to save money. You can always stretch a buck if you know you're going to be running into trouble. So what happens when team members are unsuccessful? So you have all these questions, is it a personality thing? Is it a knowledge thing? Is it a play to people's strengths, or are they not being used as effectively as they should be? Never assume you understand what is going on with someone else. It's always good to talk with them. You want to offer training if necessary. So if someone's struggling with a particular part of the project, offer training and see how that goes. Offer an opportunity to discuss. You always want to keep the channels of communication open. And you also want to draw a firm line in the sand. Say, you need to get this done by this certain date. Otherwise, we're going to have to let you go. I know it's kind of tough, but you got to do it. Now, let's talk about the 800-pound gorilla in the room. And how about when you are the problem, that you're not helping out and the other team members are grumbling about you? What do you do? So you can allow team members or the PI to suggest changes. Um, you can be clear that you no longer are useful to the project. You can discuss clearly your problems or issues and offer solutions if you want. You can decide whether you still believe in the project and then act accordingly. What you should not do is let things fester. So if at the end of the day, if you have to remove yourself from it, make sure you don't run away and hide. Just make sure you transfer your duties and responsibilities to someone else. Grant funding. Where's the money going to come from? So different ways you can fund your project. So a grant is a statement of intent. It's couched as a sales pitch, if you want to really know the truth. It contains a plan of action. It demonstrates expertise and experience, and it offers a return on the investment. So a grant is a risk that is in that it is public. It's an opportunity to test your team's understanding of its project and priorities. It gets you to focus, let me tell you, when you take money from someone. And there's also a contractual obligation. So never forget that. So where do I find grants? So regarding the oral history project in Detroit, outside Detroit, we applied for and got a $15,000 grant from Michigan, the state of Michigan, and that definitely helped us, right? But you don't have to start at the state level. You can start very locally. Talk to your department. They may have some money. They may be interested in your project, and they may offer you a small amount of money to get going. You can look at the university. At CUA, we have the Office of Sponsored Programs and Research Services, and you can check them out. And then I mentioned state humanities councils, for example, that can um, have funding that way. So if you're looking at big, identifying grant funding, you can look at the National Endowment for the Humanities. They give out $152 million back in 2018, and these particular divisions had a portion of that. Each of their divisions, they give out grants as part of their budget, and that. So, who are you going to solicit? Is it a digital humanities project? You send it to the Office of Digital Humanities. Is it specifically about preservation access? You can send it to that division as well. So you got to identify the right people. If you're looking at the National Science Foundation, 8.3 billion. Yeah, they got a little bit more. And here are some examples of where you can make requests. And also, there's National Institute of Health, 41 billion. National Library of Medicine has 441 million, given those dates. So there's lots of money out there. So the thing about these grant money is that these organizations will have specific application deadlines, so you have to meet those deadlines. Now, on the other hand, foundations quite often do not have deadlines. They have rolling application processes. So that's kind of nice. They also have the feature that there's no peer review. Um, goes through. If there's a particular board that looks at it, goes, yeah, it looks like it's a very interesting project, they'll stamp it yes right there and then and go forward. So do they get lots of requests? Oh, yes, they do. So when you're writing your grant, you want to carefully review solicitation and guidelines for them. You want to make sure that you're eligible to apply. Oh, dear me, make sure that you are eligible to apply. There's no point in doing all this if your thing falls out the scope or the scope of what the department that you're applying to is all about. So, make sure that your project is relevant to the program. Don't be afraid to contact the program officer and ask questions. Say, do you think this really fits or not? So commonly required parts, I'm not going to read all this out here, but you have to spend some time and put all this together. Everything from participants to people's backgrounds, technology, environmental scan, the budget. Oh dear, you got lots of budget. Dealing with data management plan, letters of commitment, educational material, lots of stuff. University coordinator. So you can meet with your coordinator before your first grant. How many days to process a grant is what you got to ask them. Is there someone who can help you write the budgets, on campus? Who needs to sign off on a grant? And you can ask for a link or a copy of all university policies, and understand that if you're asking for a certain amount of money from a grant or from an institution or whatever, understand that the university itself will take a cut from that. So you need to talk with your folks and know how much is that cut? How is that going to impact your budget moving forward? So you have grants with subcontracts, you have subcontract documentation. Usually you have this 14 working days prior to an external deadline. There's draft documents, 10 working days prior to external deadlines. And then you have your final documents where you have 5 working days prior to the external deadline. So you have to really, really, really plan ahead in this. So always check your final grant submission against the rules of the competition for, page length, funding amounts, PI status. You've got university rules for tuition and fees, amount of salary allowed. Make sure you factor that in. You have to keep a copy of all grants, and you have to, it's a good thing, ask for comments from reviewers, whether your grant is ultimately successful or not. It's good to ask for feedback because you can always do a future grant and build from there. Okay, so understand that grant processes have human variables. Grants will take as much time as you allow. People will wait until the last minute. The reviewers' comments can change with each review. I've seen cases where reviews, the first year they got one project got great reviews and they got a grant from the Office of Digital Humanities. The next year, they're billing on it and they got rejected. And they found out through the grapevine that one of the reviewers gave a negative review because he didn't get it. The other 4 got it and they built on it. So they had to wait another year to apply and they got it. That's a sort of weirdness that keeps me awake at night, let me tell you. So it takes just one guy. Little things matter. Proofread your application carefully. Notify your grant office of submission well in advance. And at the end they understand. Personally, I worked with people. We submitted a grant to the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and we were rejected. Okay, that year, less than 4% of applicants were approved. It was like 68 out of 1,700 applicants. So I don't feel so bad. So the secret to winning: have a compelling research question. Don't make it more difficult than it needs to be. Have a history of success. Start small, build from there. Be realistic and definitely be persistent. So what comes next? What's the end game? So when a project ends, you want to give out thank you notes, people. Give to funders, partners, the business manager. Include a statement of value. Say something like, because you did X, we were able to do Y. To supervisors, you want to thank them for loaning us person X. to work on this project. She did really well. Get the word out, let people know, you know. So, give thanks, give public statements of value of team members and partners, and then wrap everything cleanly and provide copies to stakeholders, funders, and archives and that. Let people know what you had worked on. When a project trails off, you want to formalize your documentation. You want to bag all the results, and you want to write a succession memo so that so if it does start in the future with new staff, they won't be lost. They'll say, oh yeah, this is where they completed where they're still working on. Yeah, when a project fails, and it happens, just admit failure, celebrate that you attempted the project, you acknowledge your stakeholders, and then discuss trying again, possibly at a future date. So what did you do well? Celebrate that. I value your time in helping the project. That's what you say to people. So here are some templates for project plans. I'll leave this up for a short bit. And you can always Google these particular ones. So planning a digital scholarship project, for example, you're going to find stuff out there, project charters, all these sorts of things. If you go to Carnegie Mellon, they have a website on project videos, and it's called Digital Humanities Literacy Handbook. And what it does is have various scholars have written about their who do a 5-10 minute video on their particular project and what they did. So you always want to look behind the curtain and see how did you do that. And this is one of those sites that's quite excellent. All right, so that ends that. If you need a research consultation, you just want to talk, we can definitely do that. I'm Kevin Gunn, my buddy Charles Gallagher, we're available, so let's have a conversation. And at this point, I'll ask, does anyone have any questions?
It's just you and me, right, Kevin?
I think so, Paul. Hi, thanks for sticking with me.
No, no problem. Thanks. It's helpful. Interesting perspective. Any chance you can share the slides?
Yes, once the recording's finished, and I get a copy of it, I'll send that out to you along with the slides as well. Yeah,
Perfect.
there's a
Thank
lot
you.
there. There's a lot there, Paul.
There is a lot. Yeah, I want
Yeah,
to do a little deeper digging.
yes. Okay. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you. I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.